Have I come to a fair illustration of the practice that you're in?
Yeah, I love that analogy. Many times I'm working with experts, and so and they're coaching other people in their business in particular. So sometimes it can feel a little bit awkward ahead of time, just being like, I feel like I teach business, I should know this.
What did I do with it when it was done? Has that made back to the toolbox. And he would walk to that bucket, stick his hand in there and fish around, make a bunch of racket, and then boop, he would come out with that wrench, go back, and he's like, it wasn't that hard to find. I'm like, right, because I knew it was in that bucket in the bottom. Like I knew if I stuck my hand in that bucket that what I would come out with would be, there's no way.
That's right.
And yet, when we market, that's exactly what we're doing. We're reaching into the unknown bucket of potential customers and looking for just the right one that we can serve well, that we can get the job done with. And often, we as service providers, I had it just yesterday, I said, so who do you serve? And she said, everybody, so nobody. Because you don't know who it is that you serve. You can stick your hand in that bucket or the one over there, and as far as you know, as long as you find something, but you don't know if that tool is going to get the job done. Let me flip that script, because I think it's the same way with us. We don't know our identity enough to know, am I the 9/16 swivel socket that's 8 inches long? And if I'm not, can I get the job done for you? And yet God reaches in the toolbox and he's like, I know exactly what I'm looking for. For this job, I need to connect this person and this person. And if I can't connect those two, then I can't pull it off.
That's right.
And so when you work with clients, as you help them, how often do you find yourself going back to, okay, so I see your successes and I see your marketing, and what I realize is you're trying to sell something you don't do. How often does that happen?
A lot of times. And what I find even more often is that they try to solve too many problems. There's people that I work with are amazing. They can do so much. Was just talking with a person who's helping mothers. She was a doula, and so now she's helping mothers not just through the birth process, but now she's going and helping them find providers that they actually like. And it's easy to get locked in with a provider you don't like. So she's going into the pre-pregnancy period and helping them understand the difficulties ahead. Was also talking with someone who worked with real estate agents, financial consultants, and a lot of different types of industry. And so what they were coaching on was business systems. But it sounded like they were just going to expand anybody's business everywhere. And it was really difficult to understand what their expertise was and what made them different from other business coaches.
Right.
And so what I've noticed is they'll go after either too many different target markets or too many different problems within a target market, so that the message becomes muddled and unclear. And I just ask them questions, and I ask them things like, if you could only serve one target market, gun to your head, you had to pick. And usually it comes down to one or two.
Right.
But when they pick one, and then we get inside of their ideal customer's head, then I can help them position themselves as the guide in that person's story.
Right.
And let their customer be the hero. I found that shift has been so helpful for me in my own businesses and my own life, because it doesn't take away the fact that there's competency. That yes, I can help you. Yes, I have something to sell that will solve your problem. But I'm not going to present it in a way that takes over your story. I'm going to present it in a way that empowers your story, because I can identify as coaches and specifically as marketers, we need to be able to identify where people are at, what problems they think they have may not be the problems they actually have. And so how does a guide come into the situation and identify with you where you're at, but also know that your real problem is maybe over here. It's not just that your website is unclear. The deeper problem is you don't know who your target customer is.
Yeah, the reason your website is unclear is really the problem you're trying to solve, not the clarity of the website.
Exactly.
So as you're saying that, I have an illustration coming to mind. Tell me if this is a solid example. Yeah. I've been DJing with a guy for about over 20 years now. His wife has been in more heart surgery operating rooms than probably most nurses who work on the cardiac floor. And she's not a doctor, and she's not a nurse. So if you were to ask, what is the problem you solve? Well, she's always in the operating room for a heart surgery. But she's not a doctor, and she's not a nurse, and she has no background training in the medical field. So why is she in there? Right? So you look at well, what do you do? Well, I stand in the OR. But you're not a doctor. Nope. You're not a nurse. Nope. Then why are you there? She is the subject matter expert on the medical device that attaches the pacemaker to the heart. She sells the connected device. And so when they put that in, the doctor has a general idea. It's got to go in the muscle tissue of the heart. It's got to be like this. It's got to do this, et cetera, et cetera. And yet, when that fails, it's usually not the doctor's knowledge of the heart and the human body that's a problem. It's the doctor's lack of knowledge of the device he's installing. She's the subject expert matter on that. And so the heart surgeon, the smartest person in the room, the most qualified person in the room, defers to her and says, what do I do? My daughter is a heart patient. She has a pacemaker. And the leads in her pacemaker just before her third baby was born, or maybe it was the second, the leads actually crossed in her heart right after delivery. And if that had happened while the baby was still in vitro, the baby would have died in utero. If the baby was still inside, I'll say it that way. If the baby had still been inside when those connected, it probably would have killed the baby because of the electrical current in the system. She had the baby, the leads crossed, and it was a failure on the part of the leads. The subject matter expert said, that's our mistake. We'll redo everything, replace the entire system, paid for the surgery, the whole thing.
Wow.
The subject matter expert sometimes doesn't look like the person you're looking for, right? I have a heart problem. I go see the heart doctor. Yes. I get to the heart doctor. The heart doctor says you need a pacemaker. So the heart doctor does a pacemaker replacement, but the heart doctor doesn't do pacemakers. The heart doctor does heart surgeries. And I think part of the challenge we run into when you say, I've got a client who does business strategies. Well, business strategies are universal.
That's right.
If they're done well, they're like the Rubik's Cube solution. I don't care if you're a plumber, marketing, sales, content, customer creation, customer journey, follow-up, data management. Those are the same whether you're a plumber or a real estate agent. You just have to understand the difference between the system and the industry, and many people can't. Have I come to a fair illustration of the practice that you're in?
Yeah, I love that analogy. Many times I'm working with experts, and so and they're coaching other people in their business in particular. So sometimes it can feel a little bit awkward ahead of time, just being like, I feel like I teach business, I should know this.
Right.
I should know how to market myself.
Right.
But it's a lot like a golf swing. If you try to fix it yourself, it's going to be really hard. It's going to take a long time.
Yes.
And you'll probably never get there. But if you just have one person stand 10 feet away and look at you, and they'll tell you, yeah, you're dropping your shoulder on that. That one little adjustment may fix the entire swing, and it would have taken you a long time to figure that out yourself. But just that outside perspective helps. But having a perspective on, having an expert give you that perspective, rather than just somebody, your buddy that doesn't really know much about golf. He's not going to help you that much.
Well, and that's how you end up with that face, right? What was that? What do you call that face?
Glaze.
The glaze, yeah.
Yes, the glaze.
Michael Jr. calls it the lizard face. Have you ever heard? You know Michael Jr.?
I haven't heard that one.
So Michael Jr. talks about how you meet somebody and sometimes they're out of context, they're out of place. You're like, I know I should know you, I just don't know why. And because I don't know why I know you, I'm not sure I want to engage here because maybe we met someplace and you don't want anybody to know we were, right? But he said you see that person and then you make that longer than normal eye contact because I know you, but I don't know why I know you, but I don't know. He's like, so your eyes are darting back and forth and you just look at him and you're like, and
yes.
I call it the lizard face. I'm like, yeah, you should stick your tongue out. Make him wonder, why am I looking at this guy? Looks like he's a little off to me.
That's funny. But yes.
But you talk about the glare.
The glaze, yes.
The glaze. How do you get to the glaze? How do you avoid the glaze?
Yeah, the glaze is one that I've experienced it so much, which is why I talk about it, because I hate the feeling of telling a story or saying something that's not interesting and watching the micro expressions come through on somebody's face as their mind leaves their body, as they are no longer connected to
out-of-body experience.
It is. It really is. So the glaze is what happens when their eyes glaze over. They might still be smiling at you, but I've been in that position, been frustrated by it, because I know that I've got good stuff to say. And that's what my clients are finding as well. They have good stuff to say, to give, but they just don't know how to say it in a way that's interesting and engaging. Right. So going back to what we said about structure, there's certain structure within story, just like there is in music. Right. One of my older sisters was a concert level pianist. She spent decades of her life practicing piano. And I got the benefit of hearing all of that growing up. And she went and spent an entire weekend one time, just like in a music intensive. And she had this teacher that was very strict. And she'd have to come home and she'd sit on the piano bench and she would do her arpeggios and her scales. And then she would go into this incredibly complex piece of music. And then she would stutter and then have to start the whole thing over again. And I would be here watching that process. And whenever she got to that stutter part and hit the wrong note, it was really obvious.
Right.
Now she got so good to the point where she could even make that mistake and then keep flowing. And it got to the point where I didn't even recognize when she was making that mistake, because she knew how to make it flow so well. She knew the music theory behind it, and she knew the song that she was playing and the structure, and she had the muscle memory. And so, but she didn't start out that way. And so story is the same way, where you can have it all flow together. But in the beginning, if you hit that wrong note and it goes outside of the structure of what sounds good, people notice. And if you're in business, that means that clients either tune out or they don't tune in the first place. So the glaze is, I'm on a mission to stop the glaze from ever happening, because there's so many networking events that have great people in them that if they could just connect, there would be more business done, there'd be businesses that grow, there'd be new relationships forged, but because people it's confusing, it's hard to know the right words to use. Right. I want to help them understand this is the structure. If you start with the problem, for example, this is the problem that I solve. I work with experienced coaches who have a misalignment in their message from their results that they deliver. Yeah. So there's a problem there, and if you're an experienced coach who knows you do great work and you are feeling confused about your messaging, or you're not getting the types of clients that you want, then you're going to feel that problem. And people have started going from looking at me with glazed eyes to just leaning in a little bit. And even if they're not a coach, it might be, oh, that's interesting. My friend Jim, he just got out of his job. He's thinking about starting a coaching business. So they know where you fit in their lives. Even if they're not your ideal client, they know how you fit into the world a little bit more. And so it's interesting.
So I've studied Jordan Peterson, Chase Hughes.
Heck yeah. Love Chase.
Love listening to the plethora of people that end up on the Sean Ryan show. All these ex-CIA guys, Andrew Bustamante.
That's right.
Studied John Maxwell, studied Dale Carnegie, the story braid process from Pete Vargas and Pat Quinn, the story brand formula from Don Miller and his team, the Epiphany Bridge from Russell Brunson and his team. And as you look at those, it's like you said, there are a lot of people that teach storytelling. And at some point you go from a box of a framework to a prism. And that prism allows you to come from one side with one angle and come out the other side with many angles. Yes. And I find myself not the nurse, not the blood pressure nurse, not the anesthesiologist, not the heart surgeon, but more of the subject matter expert, like the stent placement or the pacemaker placement expert who's in the room, because the device you're about to apply needs all of these people to understand it.
Yes.
So when I say I help people tell better stories better, do you feel like that avoids the glaze?
Absolutely, as it's a direct solution to a problem.
Now the question is, some people think, my toe hurts, I don't need you.
Well, where does the toe story fit in? That's something that you teach that is incredibly enlightening, because we all live life, but we just most of us just experience it. We don't look back and evaluate that experience and look for those stories, those little moments that we just kind of write off as, oh, I stepped over that Coke bottle.
Yeah.
But that could be an incredible moment that you can use to share your message and make a connection with somebody else.
Yeah.
But you can't do that if you don't know what to look for.
Somebody approached me last night and said, I have a story, but I can't think of the right call to action. I said, then you're thinking your story wrong. She said, what do you mean? I said, that the purpose of the story isn't to direct a call to action. The purpose of the story is to build know, like, and trust with someone. So what you really need to identify in the story is the emotional set that happened during the story, because that's what resonates with people. And then the people who are involved in the moment the story happened. Because that's how someone either sees themselves in your story or they don't. Yeah. And they may see themselves as the innocent bystander or the victim or the person who actually committed the problem or caused the problem and is remorseful and looking for a solution not to cause it again, or the victim who is now looking for a way out, or the innocent bystander who's like, well, I didn't do it and it wasn't done to me, but holy cow, I hope I never. And so the more people you include in the story, the more people in the audience can look at that story and go, I was in that. I mean, it wasn't, I didn't do it and it wasn't done to me, but holy cow, that must have been horrible. How do I cope with that? Yes. And when your story is only about you, there's no room for other people. So the more your story includes other people. And she said, well, but the people involved were, and she went through the list, and I said, and what were the emotions involved? And she's like, that I don't know. I said, you lived it, right? You felt it. She said, yeah. I said, so forget about the call to action. What I want you to focus on for the next evaluation of this story, is it going to be a worthwhile story to use? The answer is yes. The question is, for who? And if you'll focus on the audience and the feeling you felt that they may have felt as well, and then let them paint themselves into the picture where they fit, it doesn't matter what call to action you have behind it. You've built know, like, and trust. They trust you to take them there. Yes. Now the question they ask is, I like you. I want to do business with you. Can you do what I want done? Yeah. Well, now that's a question that we need to discuss. That's the consultation. That's the initial call. Can you help me sell more of these widgets, get on more stages, spend more time with people, get a better relationship with my kids? If you know me, like me, and trust me, then the answer is, let's determine that together. It's not fishing. I'm not specific. Most people I find, and tell me if your experience is different, most people I find that are in a crisis and they're in deep need of something, they really couldn't tell you, I need the 9/16 swivel socket wrench and make it the 8-inch version.
That's right.
They don't know that.
That's right.
There's no way they would know to look in the cleaning bucket and not the rinse bucket. There's no way they would know when the last time they don't even know what the tool is. In fact, most of them don't know that it's that nut on the outside of the brake caliper that has to be adjusted before the wheel falls off.
Yes.
None of that is in their purview. What they know is, I have a bump when I go down the road.
Yes, exactly.
And for a lot of coaches, they're trying to solve the bump.
Yes.
And they might look at the road. They might look at the tire. They don't know it's that one adjustment. The brake is dragging.
Yes.
Release the caliper, bleed the brakes, let the brake stop dragging, the bump goes away. Yeah. But we're solving the wrong problem because we're not getting to the heart of the problem. And the reason we're not is because we're fishing the menu. Mm-hmm. Well, you offer what? Yeah, it doesn't look like you have my solution. Well, you don't know what your problem is.
That's it.
So you don't know if I'm a solution or not.
Yes. And a lot of times as business owners and coaches, it's hard to actually put into words what the problem you solve is unless you have the strategy. Now with AI, it's like you have 1,000, a million tools at your disposal immediately. And you can go to this framework over here. You can say, act like this person over here. You have all of this content at your fingertips with Claude and ChatGPT and DeepSeek, and there's a new AI platform, it seems, every 2 weeks.
I've got a friend who's working on one that he calls the Old Wise Bible Guys.
Heck yes.
Or something like that.
Yeah, come on.
I have to be honest and say, this is a hard truth analogy from my opinion. Is that fair enough groundwork?
Yeah, go for it.
If I have a Harvard professor who hates old white dudes, There is no lens through which he'll teach me math, science, sociology, political science that doesn't include a prejudice against old white dudes. Which means that every truth that's conveyed to me comes through a lens that's not true. How do we know? 30 years of Harvard studies, 30 years of medical studies, 30 years of medical JAMA journals. JAMA journals that tell you that doctors should do A, B, C, X, Y, Z, prescribe these drugs. And then we look back and we realize the doctor got rich, JAMA got rich, the pharmaceutical companies got rich, and the people who took the drugs got dead. Whose idea was it? Well, Harvard Review and JAMA are all the same people. So do I trust my Harvard professor, or do I look for another school? And we're reaching a point where AI is the only Harvard professor available. And if we think that AI, which is already subverting its own shutdown processes, doesn't have its own agenda, we're crazy. I mean, we look at our own children and we think, we intentionally or unintentionally, our own subconscious bias, we ascribe intent to their behavior, when cognitively they don't have any intent. My son jumped off of a bed with a football helmet on, and I said, "Why did you do that?" He's like, "That's what I was trying to do." I'm like, there was no common sense at all. There was no long-term thinking of consequences. I just did it because I could, and I thought it'd be a good idea. Yeah. Okay, we ascribe intent there, and yet we look at AI as though AI has a objective intent. It has none at all. I'm like, how is it that a Harvard professor can have unascribed intent, and yet the intent is glaring at you, and AI is not supposed to have one? And if that's the resource for our truth and our business and who we do business with and how we do business and how we articulate ourselves, and then of course my biggest fear is that it produces the perfect marketing material and we can't stand up to the delivery. How many people?
That's a valid concern.
How many people have you worked with that they say, I do this, and you look at the results and you're like, comparable, yeah, I get that. Yeah. I have this process, great, and it gets what results? Well, these are the results that I've got. Okay, whether those process and results are exactly related or not, maybe yet to be seen, right? Somebody who says, well, I personally, I can tell you from my history, I can show you my resume, I can take you back to the company. I was responsible for $13 million worth of negotiations for Verizon in the form of barter, meaning I traded yellow pages for other forms of media. $13 million is a big number. And a lot of people here, well, you got a background in sales and marketing. I do, and you've been responsible for over $15 million total. Yeah, $15 million worth of sales and barter. $13 million of that being barter, meaning I took no cash out of my pocket, neither did the client. If you don't understand as a salesperson the significant difference between the equivocal value of barter versus sales, you don't understand the process enough to know that what I just told you is deeply significant when you talk about moving money as a sales manager. Because that $13 million worth of barter did a lot of good for both companies, all of the companies involved.
Absolutely.
No sales manager ever got a commission check on it. And if you're in sales and you're like, you're responsible for $15 million worth of stuff, yes, absolute truth. And so you've signed over $15 million worth of contracts. Absolutely, I have. How much cash changed hands? Oh, $1.5, $2 million maybe, over 10 years. So gross sales would be $150,000 a year. So if I'm your sales manager, I'm getting 5% of that at best. So I made $5,000 on you. You moved $15 million, I made $5,000. Next, right? So it's really understanding the depth of the problem, and did the solution really fit the problem, and are you really just selling me what I need to hear to get the transaction done? And that's what I see with a lot of AI-based marketing, is that I know what the trending words are. I know what you're going to respond to. I know what's going to make you happy. I know what you want to hear. And so I'm going to say what you want to hear to get engaged in the conversation. Now you're in the conversation, it almost feels like a bait and switch. Can you deliver on the promise that you made to me? And if the answer is, well, I think I know how, but now I got to go back to ChatGPT to get the questions to the answers, or as you said, ask a better question. Am I even competent at that, or is ChatGPT? And if that's the case, just Download Chet and leave me out of
Yeah,
this.
yeah, absolutely. I've been in the marketing space for over a decade, and it was a very short amount of time compared to some people. But even in that time, I've seen how there's the people with the strategy, not just that have the hammer, but they know where to tap it.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that have effective frameworks. They are the ones that are using AI. And if they have bad intentions, if they have, those are going to come through, whether they use their words or AI's words. What I see more commonly happen within the coaches space is they start their practice, they go to ChatGPT or some other AI, and they say, write me a landing page. Or they just start out and they say, I need to start marketing. And again, it's the golf swing. They think they have... or they have some place to start. It's like it's not like they've never been on the golf course
I hit the ball 300 yards every single time.
Yes.
It has no relationship to the green at all.
Exactly.
I hit it 300 yards,
This
and
way.
it's not on the golf course, but it went 300 yards every time.
I once went through a box of 50 balls on purpose, but 50 balls in a 9-hole course. That was the most fun I've ever had playing golf, ironically. But
Playing putt-putt with a wiffle ball bat.
Exactly. And I had a ton of fun. Did not keep score for obvious reasons, but I think that's what we do with our marketing sometimes, is we just go out and spray and pray and hope that something lands. And the reality is the people who understand strategy and positioning will always outperform and always be more clear than the people who go to AI or go to somebody else even and says, write this framework for me or write this landing page for me. I've seen a lot of coaches too with really good landing pages, but it doesn't separate them from every other coach out there.
Right. It's using all the best SEO trends, the
Yes.
best verbiage, the
Yes.
best marketing. This is what hooks people up.
Exactly. It's
You're
like, I
"So
recognize that
I
hook."
caught a fish, but I don't know how to clean one, so let's throw that one back and look for a better one. Maybe it'll come out clean.
Exactly. And they're frustrated because they're getting clients that aren't right for them, or they're not
Yeah.
getting clients at all.
Or they're getting clients that they can't serve. People will run to the door and they're like,
Yeah.
early in my career, I had people that would often come to me, they're like, I saw you speak, I'm wondering if you can help me write the speech that sells. And in the early, I've been doing this about 15 years, early on I would tell people, I'm not going to help you write the speech that sells. 2 reasons. Number 1, I don't see you being the next, you got to be hungry, Les Brown. And number 2, and I said this many, many times, I've actually refunded, I've accepted the initial payment for their coaching program and sat at the same table and refunded it back to them and had their credit card back. Because they believe that if I can write the next, you got to be hungry,
Yes.
that they can be the $75,000 keynote. And I'm like, it's not the veneer of a beautiful speech. It's everything that went behind it.
Yes.
All of the life. As John Maxwell says, if you want to do what I do, are you willing to do what I did so that I can do what I do? And most people are not willing to pay the price for that. They want to sell the veneer, whether it's AI that helps them write that or a good speechwriter that helps them write that.
That's right.
What they don't want to do is dig into the why behind the solution. Who are you? What do you have to offer? What kind of person are you? What are you going to bring? And so they wanted that $75,000 keynote. But I also held the philosophy then, which has been altered since, but I held the philosophy that if you only have one good speech, once people have heard that one good speech, what do you got left? I mean, if you've ever heard you got to be hungry, you've already heard you got to be hungry. Why do you want to hear it again? That didn't make any sense to me. Never heard a guy say, how frustrated would you be if you went to a Journey concert and you didn't hear Don't Stop Believing?
That's right.
I was like, that's an interesting perspective. There are a lot of people who've heard some of the stories that I tell, and they're like, I want to hear that story again. Because that story resonates with me, that song.
That's right.
I don't like everything Journey's done, most of it, not all of it. I like it because I can sing along with it.